Here we go. Warfare, red alert, it's warfare. We mentally and physically caught in the crosshair. The fight is for the soul, so many have lost their son. They trying to change your image like women in false hair. The cross bear, the image that the lost share. Unaware Satan's declared war and all's fair. It cost their souls a fortune. The scorching 70 times hotter than the earth's portion. Caution, red alert, caution. They sizing up my people like a slave auction. I told us taking on the soul of every lost one. Run, son, better yet, retreat, son. The beast run the system for a simple reason. Control thoughts that haven't been taught is treason. Think, son, better yet, reflect, son. The rate of maximum state pen erection. The modern day enslaving of dark complexion. With this wicked prison industry out complex, son. Red alert, red alert, red alert. All I got to use, I'm calling. This is an urgent warning, because a storm is coming. Red alert, we don't need no more inequality. And we can't take no more police brutality. So when we see one time, only one thing's on our mind. Lock and load. Red alert, red alert, red alert. Red alert, 41 shots the Bronx heard, but still they let the murderers walk like clockwork. Damn if I don't wanna go make my Glock work like a slave to the rhythm of shots till cops heard. It's too late to convert when you're in the dirt facing your eternal damnation. It feel great when you send the devil back to Satan. I dream about the sensation, the stimulation of my soul from leaving the fed stiff, dead and cold. Gorilla massive load and lock was on hold, but we never forgot. We lick a shot for the hollow. Everyone proceeding and those to follow. Fill up the jakes with the hollows, so maybe tomorrow it can have peace. But it's war, so desist and cease with the rallies and discussion. And when you see the beats, keep busting to the streets, echo percussion. And to your AK, keep clutching, whether Chinese or Russian model. Keep gasoline in my 40-ounce bottle. Son, I don't get bent, but I do vent and release when I light up your Chevy Caprice. Because to kill and be killed is a last decree. We stand up for justice, destroy tyranny. This is the mandate we translate from Arabia. Let's mobilize the Penn State and free Mumia before it's too late. Because we all got a due date. So fear Allah, learn to shoot straight. Red alert, red alert. Calling, all I got to you, I'm calling. This is an urgent warning, because the storm is coming. Red alert. So when we see one time, only one thing's on our mind. Lock and load. Red alert, red alert, red alert.
Peace and love to the family. How's everybody doing today? Just want to let y'all know, man, that we really appreciate, you guys, attending to our show, the Aquarian NUR, that we just kicked off. And we need support, because I'm trying to bring you guys, man, the best speakers out here, and for you to enjoy this show, man, that we have, man, Aquarian NUR, going into this Aquarian energy. And it's like they say, it's a great reset, and it is a reset, and we need to all reset our minds. And like I said, once again, I got the best speakers, man, that's going to be on these platforms, man. So if you can support the team, because this is a team effort, it's just not me, you know what I mean? So I have a Cash App, which is $ Ali Productions. And also I have a PayPal, which is paypal.me/091765. And if you guys can support and donate in any type of way, man, we will be appreciated, man, because this is a teamwork, and all of us need to collectively come together, man, so we can get our birthright back, because it was definitely stolen. And a lot of us need to understand and wake up how it's stolen, and so we can do something about it, because it's our time, man. Peace.
on. Y'all like CJ? Right on, big fella. Now listen, I want everybody to see y'all right now. Now just raise your hand. Just like this, y'all. Oh, now raise your hand. Just like this. Now, raise your hand. Just like this, y'all. Now listen, y'all. I'm sorry, now we gotta go now, right? So we gotta go to another show.
Peace and love, Islam, Salam Alaikum, Hotep, all those good things, man, involving our people, man. I want to say peace and love to everybody. This is the Aquarian Nur show. I'm Brother Ali, of course. And today we're going to get into talking about trust, setting up trust and everything like this, man, because I feel like all of us need these trust set up, man, for ourselves. But I want to get into first, man, just, you know, this is the Aquarian Nur, and we're in that Aquarian energy. Nur means the light, and it's up to us, man, to be responsible, man, adults, man, and always try to better ourselves, man, and get in this, because everything is about knowledge today. Everything. We know that our people, man, are getting the short end of the stick out here, you know, with what's going on. But it's set up that way. It's set up for us to get a short end of the stick, man. So we have to set ourselves up, man. Like in most people, their Bible, Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, it says, man, we are destroyed. We are destroyed people, man, because of lack of knowledge. So we have to gain knowledge, man, in areas, man, that we haven't been engaged in before. And a lot of our problems, man, come because of that. You know what I mean? We also have to, like, you know, the stuff that I see out here, man, of course we got entities, like I said, man, that's, you know, responsible for some of the things that we're into. But a lot of stuff, man, I see that we're the ones who keeping ourselves down. You know, we engage in all type of foolishness, man. I turn on social media, man, and I was just talking with my baby earlier. Peace and love, Bahia. You know, we was talking earlier, and a lot of stuff, man, when you turn the social media on, man, it's almost like, man, it's a shame to see our people, man, how they operate, man, sometimes. I'm telling you, man, it's really bad. Here it is, you know, you have YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all these other places, man, they censoring us, man, what we say. Yet you get certain females, man, to get on there, man, and show their whole body, man. Just do whatever they want, man. I mean, no respect for themselves, man. And they keep that stuff on. All those platforms, man, they keep all that stuff on. They don't kick them off. I feel, man, for real, I think people can actually have sex, man, and Facebook won't throw them off, man. And here it is, we can say any little thing, man, and here you go, they censored us, man, you know, kicking us off, man, doing all that type of stuff, man. So we have to, it's time now. This is the time, man. This is the age of Aquarius. We have to, man, be responsible. And, you know, Drew Ali said that, he said that if you want to change people, then you got to change their literature.
That's right.
You got to change their literature. You can't keep on doing the same thing and expect results. You know what I mean? You have to change, man, your mind, body, soul. It's time for us to change. We can't keep on doing that old, you know, grotesque stuff, man, we've been doing. You know what I mean? And here it is, man. You talking about 40 and 50-year-old people, you know what I mean? And we doing these acts out here, man. Come on, man. We never gonna have nothing good happen for us, man. You gotta get out of that lower self. You gotta stop thinking with your lower chakras. Get out of that, man. You gotta start getting the knowledge here, man. And one more thing, you know, I was looking at some of the sayings of the prophet. He said, one day, every wheel of industry is going to stop. And when they start up again, it will be in the Asiatics' favor. So that's telling you right there, man, it's time, man. You got to change your mindset and how you do stuff. You have to. You have to, man. Like, it's been automatic, and I say it all the time, but whenever this United States government, whenever this system says anything to do, I automatically know to do the opposite. I mean, it's just the way it is. Go the opposite way. That's how we need to be thinking today, man. We all, man, look here, man. We will be free if all of us just rebel against the system. The system is no good for you. It stole your birthright. It stole your land. It stole everything about you, and then traded places with you, and they made sure that you don't know nothing about that. They made sure you don't know nothing about that. But look here. We about to bring the brother Kemitu Bey up.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, brother.
Shalom alaikum. Habaraganti. Hotep. Peace and love.
You know it.
To our brothers and sisters out there, Moors, who are referred to Negro, blacks, and colored, because our national identity have been stolen. Again, we are not black, we're not colored, and we're not Negro. That is not a national identity.
That's right.
We have been bamboozled, as Malcolm said. And a man by the name of Noble Joe Ali was putting our national identity on the map. Last week, we lectured about the 14th Amendment, because the United States Constitution operates as a trust. That's a lot that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
That the United States Constitution operates as a trust.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the trustor or the grantor, the trustees, and the beneficiaries. And you can see the language in the preamble.
Right.
You go to the preamble of the United States Constitution, they talk about the posterity. That's the posterity are the beneficiaries. We the people, all right? We the people is the grantors. So when you see these different branches, those are the trustees. They're supposed to be working for us. But what happens is that when we start operating as though we 3/5, according to Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, then we're being subjugated. Even though they amended or modified it under the 14th Amendment, you're still being subjugated.
Right.
But tonight, we're going to be talking about trust. Every single last one of our people out there should have a trust set up. Because if you begin to start studying probate, how can the state put an inheritance tax or probate tax on our loved ones when they decease? And then we got to go to their thieving, death of services probate court or surrogate court to be filing wills, because that system that they're operating is a trust. And we don't need to be up under their trust.
Right.
Because their trust subjugate us.
That's right.
You're not the beneficiary of the trust, they are. And so how could they be the beneficiary or collect an inheritance tax as though they're part of your household? But they're using the birth certificate and the death certificate based upon the subjugation. This is what they're doing. So we have to get out of that situation and start getting into trust that would keep you from having your assets frozen, garnished, liens, levies, and judgments against it when you put yourself in trust, pardon me.
Right.
So that's why we talk about trust. All your assets needs to go into trust
Exactly.
as asset protection. And so tonight, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over the various types of trust that you need to learn. And one of the main things about the trust is revocable trust and irrevocable trust.
Yes.
We're going to have an overview tonight so we can learn the process.
That's right.
A revocable trust and living trust are separate terms that describe the same thing. A trust in which the terms can be changed at any time. That's a revocable trust, what I just described to you, so you won't be confused. An irrevocable trust describes a trust that cannot be modified after it is created without the consent of the beneficiaries. So the only way that an irrevocable trust can be changed, it have to have the consent of all the parties, which means the trustor or the grantor or the trustee and the beneficiaries. That's the only way it can happen. They have to have permission. Other than that, it's irrevocable. Now, the question is, I said earlier, the question is the United States, is it a irrevocable trust or a revocable trust? And of course, reading the definitions here, you should automatically know that is a revocable trust. Why? Because you got amendments in there. They're modifying the articles. So if they're changing of the articles through the forms of amendments, it can possibly not be an irrevocable trust. It would have to be what? A revocable trust.
Good.
So I gave that as an example so that way you can see how this United States trust is operating.
Good example, brother.
Thank you, brother. A trust is a separate legal entity a person sets up to manage his assets. Trusts are set up during a person's lifetime to ensure that assets are used in a way in which the person setting up the trust deems appropriate. Once assets are placed inside a trust, the third party known as the trustee manages them. The trustee determines how the assets are invested and to whom they are distributed when the owner of the trust dies or deceased. Through a trustee must manage the trust in accordance with the guidance or the guidelines laid out when the trust was formed, which means that there are certain terms that the trust has that the trustee has to follow. He just cannot arbitrarily just do what he wants to do with the trust. All right?
All right.
Those terms are terms that's pointed out by the trustor or the grantor or the settler. Those are the three words you need to know: the trustor, the grantor, and the settler. And the trustee have to go by those guidelines, which is the terms of the trust. He just cannot arbitrarily just operate the trust any way he wants to. Even when it comes to the investment, there's certain guidelines that the trustee have to go by. Otherwise, he can be removed from his position. And you can reinstate the trustee's position by new trustees if those trustees fail to operate in an integrable fashion in that fiduciary capacity.
Right.
It is common for the wealthy person to use a trust as opposed to a will for estate. See, wealthy people don't need a will for an estate because the trust is a non-probate will, which means you cannot probate a trust. So that way the loved ones or the household or the beneficiaries would get 100% from that trust. But if it's a will in estate, the court automatically wants to charge you, depending on how large the estate is, and tax you. You're gonna have to pay a filing fee and a probate tax. So they're diminishing the assets away from the beneficiaries when it's in a will or an estate under the authority of the state. And the word that you need to know is called escheat. 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 Ali, if you can look that up in the Black's Law Dictionary, I want people to hear what the word escheat means. They're going to learn today about this trust.
Yes, what?
ESCHEAT. ES.
Okay.
Yes, CHEAT. All right. So again, and it is common for wealthy persons to use a trust as opposed to a will for estate planning, and for the stipulating what happens to his wealth upon his death. Trusts are also a way to reduce tax burdens and avoid assets going to probate. So you see why it's important to have a trust, so they won't diminish any of your assets. All right. Let me know when you get that, Ali.
Yep.
You got it?
What's up?
All right. Given a flexibility of revocable or living trust, in contrast with the rigidity of an irrevocable trust, it seems all trusts should be revocable. The reasons they are not is that revocable trusts come with a few key disadvantages. Because the owner retains such a level of control over a revocable trust, the assets they put into it are not shielded from creditors. You see the difference between the revocable trust and the irrevocable? The irrevocable is shielded from creditors, but the revocable, the creditors can hit that kind of trust. Because I don't want people to think that, oh, because I put my assets into trust, that is safe and secured. No, it's not. Because you got to know if it's a revocable or irrevocable. The revocable trust can be hit by creditors. The irrevocable trust cannot be hit by creditors. So you have to know the difference between what type of trust that have to be set up to make sure you get 100% protection.
Right.
I have to articulate that, because this is some new language that our people have not known. All right. So it's very important that I articulate that point.
Let me hit this as cheap, brother.
Yes.
Okay. In feudal law, as cheap is an obstruction of the course of descent and consequent determination of the tenure by some unforeseen contingency, in which case the land naturally results back by a kind of reversion
Exactly.
to the original grantor or lord of the fee.
Let me explain that. Because they'll say the original grantor, and then you'll say, well, I thought we was the grantor. Well, that's the reason why you have to be careful on how to set up a trust, especially when it comes to the EIN number. It's very important that if you use an EIN number, you have to make sure that you say you don't have any employees. You don't have any employees. Because then what happens is that once you say that you have employees, and you notice it talks about revocable trust, right? And I'm gonna explain this to you very clearly so you know the difference on what's going on. Because a lot of us don't know what's going on. I hear some people talk about trust, they're not articulating what's going on. When you get an EIN number for that trust, you have to stipulate, especially when it comes to an irrevocable trust, you have to make sure that you put down no employees. That employee issue goes with revocable trust. Because I read earlier in my notes that a revocable trust can get hit by creditors. And so then if it could be hit by creditors, that's the revocable trust, then who's operating as the grantor? If you're the grantor, then how in the world they can hit your trust when it's revocable? because it doesn't have the same security as an irrevocable trust. So the creditors is going to start acting as though they're the grantors.
Mm.
So they grant you the loan or whatever they grant you, and now they want to be able to take it out of that revocable trust. So now you see who's operating as the grantor. So meanwhile, you operating as the grantor, but how many other grantors is out there that you don't know about? And that only happens up under the revocable trust.
So why would anybody want to set up a revocable trust?
Exactly. When the creditors can come after it.
Yeah.
So earlier I said you can have that irrevocable trust, and it's irrevocable against liens, levies, judgments, garnishments, frozen accounts. That's what the irrevocable trust would do for you. But a revocable trust can get hit with all those entities that I just gave you. So like Ali said, why would you get a revocable trust? You wouldn't want that. So now let me explain about this S-cheat. Because the lords and feudal are granting lands to the subjects on behalf of the crown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it a reversion. And that also shows you about that a revocable trust. Because once they entrust the land to you, they can always revoke that trust or that land and have it reverted back. Now the question is this happening in these days and time? Because I want you to see the science behind this or what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So Kemitu is going to explain this science of how this operation is going on with the trust. So now you have property today. Now you may say the property can be in trust, which the property is. It's in the situs trust. It's in the, or some pronounce it as situs trust. And when they say situs or situs, which is a Latin term, what does that mean? And this all goes back to the S-cheat. So I'm going to tie it in for you so you can see what's going on in this operation, in this function, and how you have that insight to be able to protect your assets.
Okay.
So the situs or the situs trust means where the property is situated. That's what that means. And where it's situated, the purpose of the situation is based upon taxation. They're going to want to tax that property because it's in the situs or situs trust, according to the counties or the state or the municipality. So you'll say, but wait a minute. Suppose I put my property into trust irrevocable. You can do that. But you got to be careful because you don't want to prejudice your irrevocable trust to being revocable. You got to be careful. And this is why I tell people, and I will continue to tell you and teach you, that there's a tax bond on the property in perpetuity. And there's laws against perpetuity, but again, these feudals, the feudal system that we're in, have the property in perpetuity under tax bonds. And that's why you pay property taxes. So when you don't pay that tax quarterly like you're supposed to, then what they're going to do is they're going to foreclose on your property in realm, not in persona, but in realm. And that's the municipality. That's one side of it that you need to know. The other side, if you got a mortgage on your property, that could be a problem. It's good to put it in trust because then you're shifting the property into in realm as opposed to in persona when you put it in trust. Because a lot of these lawyers don't realize that anytime you transfer your property or relinquish your interest in your property into a trust, right, you can no longer be litigated in persona under a foreclosure. So that's a way to protect your property irrevocably. So I have to give you both sides so you'll know what's going on. Because who's teaching you this? Some people got trust out there. People have called me and say they got trust. And I ask them questions about the trust. You know, how did the trust function? What are you trying to do with the trust? Is it irrevocable? I ask questions about the trust because people do call me up. Listen, commit to you. I got a trust. Can I transfer my property into trust? Of course, but I have to learn what kind of trust you got. Because you may got a revocable trust and don't realize that creditors can come at it.
Hey, let me ask you a question now, Kemitu. You.
Yes, Noble.
So say like I say probably 95% of the people are not really literate about trust, right? So when they go to a lawyer, if they go to a lawyer not having any knowledge about what a trust is, so you go to a lawyer and he know you don't know nothing about no trust, will he set that trust up in a revocable?
You know, that's a very good question, Brother Ali, because I had a client some years ago and a lawyer set up the trust for him. And of course, it was a revocable trust because the lawyer is a fiduciary officer of the state. So he ain't going to protect your assets as you think he would. The only ones that he probably would do it for is the wealthy.
Right.
But the man who ain't the wealthy, they're not going to protect their trust. They're not going to set up a trust to protect your assets. And 9 to 10, they're going to do an estate will trust. And I had to dismantle and remove the language out of the trust that reflected the will and estate. Because they would have been liquidating that estate to the creditors before the beneficiaries. So a lawyer ain't going to set it up for you the way he would do a wealthy rich person like Warren Buffett.
Right.
You know, the other Microsoft Mongol.
Yeah.
You know, the wealthy, he's not going to do that like he's going to do you.
And he probably
going to have the money to give him to set it up to be irrevocable. That's the science.
Man, he probably can even add his name somewhere in there, and he know you really not gonna study the trust. You believe in him, and the lawyers they work for the state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
those lawyers, that is known to happen. I'm aware of that, and they got disbarred when it was found out that they were skimming off the top of the trust, knowing that they can't put themselves into the trust as though they were the beneficiary. So you're right about that, Ali. I came across stuff like that also.
Right.
You know. So it's very important to make sure that if you're going to transfer your property into an irrevocable trust, the tax bond is what you need to begin to get to become the bondholder. And anyway, let me share this other knowledge to you. If you're going to have an irrevocable trust and you're not going to deal with the tax bond or don't know how to deal with the tax bond, the next thing you can do is get a municipal bond. A municipal bond can help indemnify your assets, such as your property. Because a municipal bond is a tax-free bond, and you earn a dividend or equity from that municipal bond. So if you have any property tax problems, that municipal bond can bail you out because it would indemnify in protecting your property. Because we live in a bond age. So if you're going to have your property transferred into an irrevocable trust, you should have a bond. If you're not going to get the tax bond, you should get a bond to indemnify your property, so that way your property would be vouchsafed within which means it's going to stay irrevocable. So it's important that I let that knowledge be known, because a lot of us don't know how this thing functions. So back to my notes. It's been said that it is common for wealthy people or a person to use a trust as opposed to a will for estate planning and for stipulating what happens to his wealth upon his death. Trusts are also a way of reducing tax burdens and avoid assets going to probate, as I spoke before, giving the flexibility of a revocable or living trust in contrast with the rigidity of an irrevocable trust. It seems all trusts should be revocable. The reasons they are not is that revocable trust comes with a few key disadvantages. Because the owner retains such a level of control over a revocable trust, again, the assets are put into it are not shielded from creditors. You see, this is what I was saying earlier. The way they are in an irrevocable trust, which means they are shielded from creditors. If they are sued, now see, I'm saying this because it goes back to the mortgage, because the mortgagee is operating as a creditor. So you can transfer your property into a trust to protect it from the mortgagee who's operating as a alleged creditor. And the reason why I say alleged creditor, because 9, 10, and 10, what those mortgagees do is transfer your mortgage note into a trust, which is Security Exchange Commission, and they're making money on that note. And that's in the trust, but they're using the mortgage lien as collateral for the premiums that you're paying, which is actually surplus money, because we did not know that the note that you signed at the closing was the consideration. It was the consideration that you paid your mortgage in full, but what they did is they stipulated what they call is hypothecation, when you make these premium payments for the next 30 years, 25 to 30 years. So this is how they this is how they get us, because the mortgage is operating as a constructive trust. It's operating as a constructive trust, and not only that it's operating as a constructive trust, but it is also operating as an adhesion contract, which is a disadvantage. And you notice the only signatures on there is the so-called mortgager and not the mortgagee. So now you know that the mortgage is operating as a constructive trust. Yes, Brother Ali.
That's really not a contract if it's just him. Because the contract,
well, it's called an adhesion contract. So I mean, I agree with you, because it says a contract is 2 or more parties.
Right.
You're right about what you're saying, but these folks, these legal entities have so much ways of getting over on people, and that's what's going on. So here your name is on a mortgage, and the mortgage is operating as a lien on the property as collateral for the note. But once the note paid off the mortgage in full, and how you know, people would say, well, how do you know that the mortgage was paid off in full? Because when you go to the land records, they have to pay the mortgagee would take your money as the mortgager and pay a real estate tax and a mortgage tax. So if you're paying a mortgage tax, which is 10% of the mortgage, why are you continue to keep paying premiums on a mortgage that was paid off through the note? And they take the note and go to the Fed window and cash in on that note. That's why they stamp that note paid to the order of without recourse. They're getting paid because that note is operating in consideration. And we don't know these things. They're jerking us around.
Hey, bro, come back.
Yes.
I'm listening to the language, brother, of you talking about the mortgage, a mortgage, dead, dead.
Yeah.
I'm listening to man.
Yeah, you're right, because the mort, M-O-R-T, which you already know means dead. All right. And then gauge refers to a pledge. So it's a dead pledge.
Yeah.
But the mortgage, all mortgages are in violation of 12 USC section 73. 12 USC section 73 is what the mortgage is in violation of, because they cannot hypothecate the loan. They cannot pledge for a debt for a loan. And that, what I gave you, is the actual oath for directors of the bank. But they are hypothecating and pledging loans and got you signing your name, and that's the reason why you don't see their signature on it.
Mm.
Yeah, and they're operating as beneficiaries once they assign the mortgage to another lender.
So a statutory trust will be the same as a revocable trust then, basically, right?
That's right. That's right. That's what that is.
Okay.
That's what that is. The statutory trust is operating in the form of a revocable trust.
Right.
Because of the owners retain such level of control over the revocable trust, the assets they are put into or are not resealed from creditors as a way as they are an irrevocable trust. If they are sued, the trust assets can be ordered, liquidated to satisfy any judgment put forth. Now, this is referring to a revocable trust, is what they're talking about. When the owner of the revocable trust dies, the assets held in trust are also subject to both state and federal taxes. You see that?
Mm.
That's the revocable
Right.
trust.
Right.
That's when the owner dies. And that's where that S cheat come in, because it's going to be, it's a reversion. It's going to revert back to the federal and state. See, what Ali read is a definition of an S cheat going back during the time of feudalism with them lords, with the crown.
Mm.
But is that happening today? And this is what I'm trying to get you to see, that that's still happening today in these quote unquote modern times.
Mm-hmm.
And I say quote unquote modern times because when they say modern, most people don't know what they mean by modern. Modern means things that are modified.
Mm. Man.
All right. Modern means things that are modified. It's constructive. It's not original. It's constructive, like constructive trust. So you want something that's original, because anything of the original is a fraud.
Wow.
All right. So it's very important to be aware of that.
Language, man. The language.
Yes, the language is the key. You're right. It's the key. Now, irrevocable trust. The terms of an irrevocable trust, in contrast, are set in stone the minute the agreement is signed. Except under exceedingly rare circumstances, no changes may be made to an irrevocable trust. The main reason to select an irrevocable trust structure is taxes. Irrevocable trust removes the assets from the benefactor's taxable estate. You see that? So the beneficial estate is non-taxable, which means probated. A lot of people don't realize that when you talk about taxing something, what are they talking about? And that's why Kemitu is going to give you the language. So you learn this. When they talk about taxes, they're talking about probate.
Mm.
Probate court is operating as a tax court.
Mm.
And I already said it in other lectures that all these courts are operating under the Internal Revenue System.
Mm.
All of them. Every single last one of them. And I broke it down to show you how it's operating as an internal revenue proceeding. But the probate court is nothing but a tax court. Is a court in equity. It's operating as a court in equity. So now you see what's going on here.
Hey, you know, even with the irrevocable, we still have to get that EIN from the IRS.
That's the only reason why, Brother Ali, because most people want to open up a bank account.
Oh.
All right, because if you're going to use it for what they call as commercial transaction, you have to get the EIN number, because commercial activities is all under the Internal Revenue System.
True.
But again, to keep you vouchsafe even when you get the EIN number, as I said earlier, you have to make sure you say you don't have any employees. That's what makes it taxable.
Mhm.
If you say you got any employees, you're going to be subject to that tax.
Okay.
And that's going to prejudice your irrevocable trust.
Right.
So you must say you want no employees on that form when you fill it out. Oh, and when you open up an account, thank you, Ali. When you open up an account with the bank,
Yeah.
you make sure that is a non-interest bearing checking account, a non-bearing interest checking account. Because if it's bearing interest, it's going to be taxable. And that's going to be a prejudice. So you can't operate in the commercial capacity. You just got to know how to operate. You see what I'm saying? So that was a very good point about you bringing up the EIN number.
Gotcha.
All right. So again, the benefactor having transferred assets into the trust effectively removes all rights of ownership to the assets and for the most part, all control, which means you have no tax liability for those assets once it's transferred into the trust. The main reason to select an irrevocable trust structure is taxes. Irrevocable trust removes the assets from the benefactor taxable estate, is what I read before. I just go over these things again because I wanted to be clear to people who's learning this, meaning they are not subject to estate tax upon death. So that means your loved ones will get 100% of that asset because it's non-probatable. And when you talk about tax, you're talking about being probated.
So,
Uh-huh.
so can that trust, being as irrevocable, can that just like say like if one does transition, can that trust just keep on rolling?
Yeah, you can have a trust that it doesn't necessarily have to end upon the death of the grantor, trustor, or settler. You can have the trust to continue to function. And how you would do that is the benefactors or the beneficiaries all can come together and operate in a trustee's capacity. This change your position. And then they put their children down as benefactors. You know, to keep it going.
Right. Right.
So that's the science behind it.
So more than likely, the people that's the beneficiaries now, they would probably be the trustees.
Exactly. And they still would get something out of it because the trustees get what you call is an administrative pay, or for operating the trust on behalf of the benefactor. All right. So, and that's a language that you can put into the trust because mostly that's not a language that's in the trust. If you read these trusts, it doesn't say that in there. But because I study that, this is the reason why I can see that and share that knowledge to keep it going.
Right.
All
right.
Yeah, because you're not trying to liquidate the trust as far as upon the death of the grantor, settler, or trustor, because most likely that's what happens. But you want to keep it going, especially if there's an investment going on.
Right.
As I read earlier, if the trustee is investing into certain assets, that's going to keep it going.
I was reading one time on Morehouse and Spelman, which they say are these historical Black colleges, right? So they got those two schools they set up as trusts.
That's right.
Morehouse is set up, and they both are ran by the Rockefellers.
Oh, all right.
So Morehouse is Rockefeller's. Morehouse is Rockefeller's businessman and his I think it was his pastor. that was him, Morehouse. And
Right.
and Spellman is Rockefeller's wife's maiden name. And they both set him up as like financial endowments. So
That's right.
it's just business, man.
Yeah. It's yes, in the form of a trust. That's right.
Yeah, they don't and they don't have anything to do with us. They getting paid, you know.
As long as that school operates, they're going to be
Yeah,
getting those endowments.
yep,
You're right.
yep.
As long as those schools are up and functioning and operating, they're going to get those endowments. And that's surplus money because students who goes to Spelman or Morehouse, they got to pay in those schools.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the only reason why those endowments go into those schools because those universities are tax exempt.
Mm.
So that's why the Rockefeller would put their money there. Because it becomes a tax write-off, you know. But of course, he got his stuff in trust also. So they got all kinds of ways of what they call as tax avoidance, which is legal. Tax evasion is illegal, but tax avoidance is legal. So they set
They
up those
getting
trusts as tax avoidance for endowments and tax purposes, which is some
man,
of
they
the
getting
language I
paid.
read it.
They getting paid, man, while we stay broke for 30 or 40 years.
Yes, that's true, brother. That is so true. So again, upon the estate tax, the death of the grantor, settlor, or trustor, the beneficiary would not have any tax liability for any income generated by the assets. Irrevocable trust can be difficult to set up and require the help of a qualifying attorney. Yeah, but that's for the wealthy. That's not for me and you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna charge you an arm and a leg where we can't even afford it.
Right.
An irrevocable trust cannot be modified, amended, or terminated without any permission of the grantor, named beneficiary, or beneficiaries. What is an irrevocable trust? An irrevocable trust is the type of trust where the terms cannot be modified, amended, terminated without permission of the grantor. All right. The grantor having effectively transferred all ownership of asset into the trust legally removes all of their rights and ownership to the assets and the trust. How is an irrevocable trust works? The main reason for setting up an irrevocable trust are for estate and tax considerations. The benefit of this type of trust for estate assets is that it removes all incidents of ownership, effectively removing the trust assets from the grantor's taxable estate. It also relieves the grantor of the tax liability. So now the grantor doesn't have a tax liability, just like the beneficiaries won't have a tax liability. I have to emphasize that. On the grantor's estate, it also relieves the grantor from tax liability on the income of the assets generated, while the tax rules vary between jurisdictions. In most cases, the grantor can't receive these benefits if they are the trustee of the trust. The assets held in the trust can include, but are not limited to a business, investment asset, cash, and life insurance policies. So this is good information to know how your trust can function. Setting up a trust of any type can be complicated enough that an attorney is necessary, as such trusts are thought of as vehicles for wealth and wealthy individuals. And giving the attorney fees, this setup required a few $1,000s or more. That may be true. However, trusts have a place in the estate and legacy planning for individuals for more modest means. Irrevocable trusts are especially useful to individuals who work in professions that may make them vulnerable to lawsuits, such as doctors or attorneys. Once property is transferred to such a trust, it is owned by the trust for the benefit of the named beneficiaries. Therefore, it is safe from the legal judgment and creditors, as the trust would not be a party to any lawsuit. And you see what they're saying? Doctors and lawyers or anybody in profession, if they know about this, can indemnify themselves from any lawsuits by having an irrevocable trust.
Mm.
And this is good information to know.
Yeah.
You know, and 9 to 10, a lot of them is not even set up like that because
Mm.
they don't know.
Mm.
They don't know.
Let me ask you this. Since
Yes.
you have different assets, is it better to put everything in one, or should you have separate trusts for different things?
It would be good if you can separate your assets into different trusts. You know, like if you got a lot of houses,
Right.
you put your homes into that trust. You know, instead of putting your car there, your cars, you can put the houses in one trust, the cars in another trust. You can put stocks and bonds in another trust.
Right.
You know, not to say that that one trust cannot hold it, but it's good that you can have separate trusts. It would be almost like a brain trust.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and those trusts could be connected to each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one trust could be the beneficiary of another trust.
Mm.
You
Gotcha.
know,
Gotcha.
yeah. So that's a very good question, Ali.
Gotcha.
Very good question. Today's irrevocable trust comes with many provisions that were not commonly found in older versions of these instruments. These additions allow for so much greater flexibility in trust management and distribution of assets, provisions of such as decanning, which allows a trust to be moved into a newer trust, see, that has more modern or advantages. Provisions can ensure that the trust assets will be managed effectively now and in the future. Other features that allow the trust to change its state of domicile can provide additional tax savings and other benefits. So you can uh, open up your trust in other states because each state, like Florida, for example, they don't have state taxes. You know,
Right.
you know, New Mexico. You know, certain states have different tax advantages that you won't have to be liable for. An
Mm-hmm.
irrevocable trust is a type of trust where the terms cannot be modified, which we read earlier, amended, or terminated without the permission of the grantor's name, beneficiary, or beneficiaries. The grantor, having the effective transfer of all ownership of assets into the trust, legally removed all of their rights of ownership of the assets and the trust. Irrevocable trusts cannot be modified after they are created, or at least they are very difficult to modify. Irrevocable trusts offer tax shelter benefits that revocable trusts do not. So you will hear me repeat something over and over again that's important because you want something to be able to register when you learn something that is new
Definitely.
in this process. So you'll hear me repeat certain terms over and over again because repetition is how you learn.
Exactly.
Usually, if something goes by the first time and you don't hear it again, we have a tendency with the um, what they call is the what is it? When there's limitations on your mind, because there's limitations on our thoughts. Because you know, when you get so much information, limitations can play a role of how much that you required as you were taking in information and taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
So repetition is how you learn.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Irrevocable trust types. Irrevocable trust comes in two forms: living and testamentary trust. What is a testamentary trust? A testamentary trust is a trust that is established in accordance with the instructions contained in a last will and testament. A will could have more than one testamentary trust. The trustee name is responsible for managing and distributing the trustor's asset to the beneficiary as directed in the will. Now, I just want to share this with you. You know, they have cemetery trusts where you open up a plot of land into a cemetery trust,
Mhm.
and you pay into that. And that also is protected. Because one thing I learned, and I only learned this from a loved one of my household, deceased a couple of years ago. We was in the funeral parlor. I mean, in a loved one of mine. We was
Right.
in the funeral parlor, and the director of the funeral parlor was giving us some insight of how they function concerning the policy. So they got the company who holds the policy for the policyholder on the phone. And something that was interesting that I learned that we need to be aware of, that if you are a beneficiary of a life insurance policy, you got to be careful, because you can put that in trust. Because if you owe any taxes as the beneficiary, they're going to deduct that money out of that life insurance policy.
Mm.
And I've heard this over the phone as one of the agents were distributing that information. So you can put your life insurance policy as the beneficiary in a trust.
Wow.
I need to make that known, because Brother Ali, what we drop in here tonight, this is extraordinary for us to put this out there. Because who's dropping this kind of jewel information about trust and the operation between irrevocable and revocable trust? Who's putting that out there? And so by you having this on this channel is honorable and commendable of you to do that, brother. And I'm honored to be on this platform with you to distribute this knowledge with articulation.
We thank you for that, brother.
Because Noble, we are being slayed out there, and we need to have asset protection so we can survive on what I recognize as economic gentrification and accounting fraud. We need to protect ourselves and our loved ones, because we don't want to be working in vain.
Right.
You know, with somebody on the turn around and take everything you worked for all your life,
Yeah,
and
man.
come up with nothing.
That's horrible.
Very horrible, brother.
It's like a nightmare, man.
Exactly. So I'm breaking this information down with articulation so people be clear, and not only with articulation but repetition, because then I want to be able to register to people who is hearing this for the first time.
Right.
Sometimes a will trust and testamentary trust is irrevocable at sometimes. So they do got, the reason why I'm saying this is because the revocable testamentary or will trust is the one where the creditors will come at you, you know. So they do got the irrevocable trust on these entities. Some, you know, you got to be aware of this, because and that's why it was stated in my notes as I was taking notes, is sometimes. And the reason why I'm saying sometimes, because most of the time, these type of trusts, these testamentary trusts, are revocable. So you got to make sure that if you do get into this type of trust, that you have to make sure that it's irrevocable. A living trust, also known as an inter vivos, which is Latin for between the living trust, is originated and funded by the individual during their lifetime. Some living trust examples are irrevocable life insurance trusts. You see, this is what I was talking about, putting that life insurance and policy into trust, right? Then you got the grantor retainer annuity trust, spouse lifetime access. A grantor retained annuity trust, they call that a GRAT, G-R-A-T, a GRAT. That's what that is. The grantor retained annuity trust is a financial instrument used in estate planning to minimize taxes on large financial gifts to family members. Under these plans, an irrevocable trust is created for a certain term or period of time. The individual established the trust pays a tax when the trust is established. Assets are placed under the trust, and then an annuity is paid out every year. When a trust expires, the beneficiary receives the assets tax-free. I know a more right now who's getting that. I know more right now who's getting that. Because his mom set that up when she was working in them financial agencies. You know what I'm saying? So I'm familiar with the GRAT. All right. Yes. Yes.
Do things have to be paid off? Do things have to be paid off before you can put them in a trust? Or
but that's what I was expressing here in the GRAT. You pay the tax. You pay the tax, which is a minimum tax, and that annuity is being paid out every year. So if you want your loved ones to receive annuity upon your being deceased, a GRAT trust is the trust that you want, because earlier, as I said, that a trustee can make investments for the trust. So the investment that you want, that you want a trustee to set up for your beneficiaries is a GRAT trust. So you can set up a trust within a trust within a trust within a trust, as I was saying earlier, like a brain trust. So you want the trustee to set up a GRAT in reference to an annuity. So when the person deceased, they'll receive those benefits of annuities every year. You want your loved one to have that. That could be set up within your trust. You see what I'm saying? So what you described to me, Ali, is what I'm talking about. This is something that we need to know, because how many laws out there are breaking down this science on trust? A lot of Moors know about the trust, but there's a lot of functions that they don't know about.
Right.
And how to operate. And I know that because I get telephone calls. I get calls about it. And so a lot of us don't know. And this is what I study, Ali. You know how I get down from my crown. I study like a beast.
Hey, look, like I say, I'm reiterating some things because I wanna know for sure. So if I was to go out here and purchase a home, and instead of putting that home in my name or two people's names, I can put that in the trust, that I can set it up in the trust name at that particular time?
Well, you know, it's interesting because the mortgage company or the banks, for some apparent reason, they don't do that with us. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but it's who it happens for. Like the wealthy gets the irrevocable trust. Matter of fact, if you can go to a bank, matter of fact, I didn't even put this down in my notes. You know, because not all the time I'm going to think about pertinent information when I put my notes down. You can go to a bank, because remember, in my notes, it was talking about going to an attorney to set up an irrevocable trust. If you go to a bank, which you don't want to, did you know that the bank set up revocable trusts? All of them? And they charge you several $100s to set up a revocable trust? The banks do that. A lot of people don't know that.
No, I didn't know.
A lot of people don't know this. So this is how you know I'm on my square more, because I want our people to know what the hell is going on.
Right.
But the banks will set up a revocable trust just to set you up to get hit by creditors. But let me hit you with something so you'll know what Kemitu was talking about.
That's right.
There's a brother who I set up a trust for, and I set up for him a custodial account. I told him what he had to do. Birth certificate of the child and the social security number, and open up a custodial account. Then he had a joint account. And then some creditor came and hit him. And you notice the only thing they hit, and he came back to me and told me that they hit the joint account, they didn't touch the trust fund, and they did not touch the custodial account, because the custodial account for the child operates as an irrevocable trust. A lot of people don't know that either. And that shuts down child support. If a brother wants to stop the agency from coming after for child support, set up a custodial account. And it takes the birth certificate and the social security card, and you set up the account, and you deposit the money in that account, and you get the bank card, and you can get the bank card and send that to the mother. And that would kill child support. Because a lot of people don't know what the child support is about. It's all about a financial responsibility. That's what the child support is about. That's what it's about. They're saying they're calling you an absentee parent. You know what I'm saying? So what do they mean when they say absentee? They're talking financial. You abandon your financial responsibility to the child. That's what they're saying. So to get yourself out of that position, open up a custodial account. And once you open up that custodial account, you put your money in there for the child.
As an irrevocable.
That's what you do. Exactly. Trust. That's what it is. That's what a custodial account operates as, an irrevocable, because they didn't hit that account. They didn't hit the trust, and they didn't hit that account. They hit his joint account. They took out a few $1,000s out of his joint account. And I got on his case. I said, brother, you know better than that. You've been around me. You learned from me. How you gonna be around me for so many years, and then you turn around and have that kind of money in this joint account? So when these damn wolves and thieves come at you, now you're gonna wind up taking a loss unnecessarily. So I'm putting that information out there. And again, you have to thank Brother Ali for having me on to demonstrate this language and this articulation and repetition and learning.
So you was just talking about a custodial account, right?
Yes.
So if they you set up the custodial account and you're depositing say like $500 a month in it, right?
Yes.
And say like the mother, you know, saying, nah, you should be paying me $1,000, you know what I mean? We have to go along with that. I mean, because you know, the courts may say, nah, you should be paying $1,000 a month. But if you already setting up, or if you already putting in $500 a month into this trust, you see what I'm saying? Can they?
No, then the $1,000 cannot be a factor.
Huh?
$1,000 cannot be a factor.
Okay.
Because if you're putting money into that custodial account, you're taking control over that.
That's deep, bro.
You're taking control. And you're doing it by the birth certificate and the Social Security. And most men don't even have their child or children's birth certificate and Social Security number because they don't pay attention like that, like them females.
Right.
Because they take that same birth certificate and Social Security number card and go to public welfare. And this is how they come after you for child support. But if you open up a custodial account with them same instruments, it shifts your financial liability and you're no longer an absentee parent. So you got to know the language that these people.
So that's like you already setting that trust up, and here it is. She went to the child support enforcement, and now they have you come to court, and you go to court with these documents. It ain't nothing they can say then.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go, brother.
Wow.
Y'all have done it. We have done it. This is not something that I'm just throwing jewel information out there. This has been done already.
My brothers out there, y'all hear that? grab to that. That's deep.
So I have to share that knowledge. Like I said, it's not, because that wasn't in my notes. I mean, like I said, I got a lot of notes here. I got 5 pages of notes, brother.
Right.
You know, I sit down and just taking notes and writing things down and putting these things together for this presentation tonight for trust.
Man.
So it's a lot of information. It's a lot of information, Brother Ali. So, you know, by me dialoguing with you and reviewing my notes, other thoughts come to my mind about things I didn't say or had down in my notes.
Right.
For instance, in my notes, what is a qualified personal residence trust? A lot of people don't know about that. There's so many different trusts out there that Kemitu, you know, is off the chain. But I want you to know these different trusts because then you would have the option on how to have recourse, relief, and remedy. You would have recourse. And once you got this recourse, that's going to give you a relief and your remedy. So a qualified personal residential trust is a specific type of irrevocable trust that allows the creator to remove a personal home from his or her estate for the purpose of reducing the amount of gift tax that is incurred, when transferring assets to the beneficiary. So you see that? That's called a qualified personal residence trust. That's what that does. So that reduces the amount of the gift tax because the Internal Revenue, I don't recall the statute at the moment. They have what they call as a gift tax and an estate tax. And those are 2 different types of taxes. All right. And matter of fact, there's a name where you eliminate the taxes from the grantor, eliminate the taxes from the beneficiaries. They call it the generational skip tax. That's what that's called. There's so many different terms and names out there.
Right.
But that's not even down here in my notes. I got quite a few things I just talked about that's not even here in my notes. So it's a lot. It's a lot. We'd be here all night talking about this. So now you know about the qualified personal resident trust. I read it again. It's a specific type of irrevocable trust that allows the creator to remove the purpose of reducing the amount of gift tax that is incurred when transferring assets to the beneficiary. Now check this one out. Now I use this for a client. I use this and I freaked the court with this.
Right.
And this was in court. What is a charitable remainder trust? A charitable remainder trust is a tax-exempt, irrevocable trust. Use that with a client because I had to argue in his pleading that it was a remainder trust because the husband said he transferred the estate into a trust, and the court was coming at her as they was trying to take the estate. But the remainder trust, listen to what it says right here. A charitable remainder trust is a tax-exempt irrevocable trust designed to reduce the taxable income of individuals by first dispersing income to the beneficiaries of the trust for a specific period of time, and then donating the remainder of the trust to the designated charity. This is a split interest giving vehicle that allows a trustor to make contribution, be eligible for a partial tax deduction, and donate remaining assets. This is off the chain. This is how more should be operating. I read it again. A charitable remainder trust is a tax-exempt, irrevocable trust designed to reduce the taxable income of individuals by first dispersing income to the beneficiaries of the trust for a specific period of time, and then donating the remainder of the trust to the designated charity. Do you hear me, Moors? Which means you can set up a charitable trust and also a charitable remainder trust. So you can split it, pay off the beneficiaries, so you can reduce this particular tax that's exempt at a specific time. And you can donate whatever's left over into another trust. Another trust.
Deep, brother.
Right?
Deep.
Yes, to be eligible for partial tax deduction. So not only that is an exemption, but it's also a tax deduction, and the donation would be the tax deduction. So this is the science that more should learn, because this is how we should be operating.
Yeah.
I know Moors are probably out there jumping out their seats because they probably saying, God damn, Kemitu, you got a lot of jewels and a lot of information about the goddamn trust. I didn't even know that brother had so much information. You damn right I want to have it, because we be enslaved out there.
Big time.
We be enslaved. So then there's another type of charity.
No, go ahead. What?
There's another type of charitable trust called a charitable lead trust. A charitable lead trust is the type of irrevocable trust designed to reduce a beneficiary potential tax liability upon inheritance. That kills that inheritance tax. This does. The charitable lead trust does that.
Wow.
Because you can have a trust within a trust, which means you can have a trust and set up a trust for the beneficiary so they won't have to be liable for this tax. Ain't that serious?
Man, you know what? What's that guy named Gene Keating?
Yes.
I was looking at one
into this like I did.
Huh?
He didn't even go into this.
Hey, Kemitu, you know they messing with us.
Because I've seen down tonight, I'm listening. Whatever.
You know they messing with us.
You know they're messing with us. I'm in a lecture, beloved. I'm doing a lecture. Hello?
Hey.
Huh?
They's messing with us.
I'm doing a lecture. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm doing a lecture. Pardon me for that, brother. My phone just rang and folks be wanting to call me.
No, look here. I'm saying they messing with us, man, because you starting to freeze up a little more. They messing with us, man. They don't like this.
You know the science.
Out there, right? You know?
Yeah. You're right. Gene Keating is what I was saying. I've listened to over the years a lot of what he puts out there. And the only reason why I listen to this because our people is listening to him. And they tell me about Gene Keating and others that I can't even recall the name at the moment. And if you notice the knowledge that I put out there, as opposed to what they put out there, they're not even talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gene Keating was make mention of a trust, But is he going into details like I'm going to through this tonight? He just touches on a lot of different issues, and people will say, "Oh, this dude is very knowledgeable." Gene Key.
Well, what I was going to say about him is I think he was with he set up the, I mean, he was talking about the DOTC and how all of them fall into all these different trusts.
Exactly.
And that's
yes,
what
the
you're talking
DTC,
about.
yes, in the DTC, yes. I'm aware. I was in that building, taking up a course in QSUP because the same companies you named was in the same building, 55 Water Street.
Right there, yeah. That's right. So this stuff, man, this information is very, very important, man. I mean,
well, not only that is important, what you said, Brother Ali, but look at the details of the information. Tonight, we gave veritable type irrevocable trust and vocable trust. If you notice that. Like that, breaking down charitable lead trust, a charitable lead trust works by donating payments out of the trust to charity. And you can set up a charity trust from that charitable leads trust. So you still are maintaining. All right. They don't want you to do that. All right. For a set amount of time. After the period expires, the balance of the trust is then paid out to the beneficiaries while this reduces the taxes owed by the beneficiary once they inherit the remaining balance. It also presents to them with other potential tax benefits, such as income tax deductions for charitable donations. So that's why you would set up a charitable trust on top of the charitable leads trust. You'll connect the two together. That's what I said earlier in this dialogue, that you can make the trust a beneficiary of another trust.
Now,
protect the beneficiary.
Let me ask this.
Yes.
You set up, you got an irrevocable trust going on, right?
Yes.
And say like for those that work and they get a paycheck from companies, whatever, right? You have your paycheck going into this irrevocable trust account, right? What about the taxes on? What about the taxes?
See, this is, you know what? It's interesting you said that, Ali. Oh man, see, this is why I love the dialogue, because I told people you're going to get the best out of me, even though I'm breaking this stuff down. When you ask some questions, that to me, that means more to me than what I'm breaking down in my notes.
Right.
I just had a class past weekend on Saturday. Class started at 3. We didn't finish at 8:30. And they wanted to continue to go on because they were just so infatuated of what I was dropping.
Right.
And you touched on something that was mentioned in the class. And so I expounded on that. But what you just asked me, I expounded on it. So my thoughts are running away with me because I was trying to think about what you asked me in light of what was said in the class.
Right.
You're gonna have to repeat that again, Ali.
I said,
repeat that again so I can.
People are getting paychecks, but they got a irrevocable trust set up, and they have their check.
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pardon me, brother. It came back.
Yeah.
And my thoughts ran away from me in the light of that class.
Overload, brother.
All right. When we are being subject to 26 USC section 3402, that talks about the employee deductions. And then that's supposed to be no employee deductions because the employer never had got the authority to deduct anything from you once he acts as a tax collector and get credit for it. You have to have that authority to do that. And none of those employees have that. So it's the 2678 form. You got to look at the year, I think it's 2012. And there's a box on the right-hand side that actually explains that the employer have to get a letter of authority from the district director in order to collect a tax from your pay. And that's from that form 2678. But you got to look at the year, because once I started dropping that jewel many, many years ago, like 15, 20 years ago, and I blew a lot of people's minds with it, apparently they was acting on it. And so the IRS turned around and took that information off the form. So they modified the form so you won't get that knowledge.
Right.
All right. So it's interesting you said that, Brother Ali, because under New York State Constitution, Article 1, Section 17, specifically states that the labor of human beings is not an article of commerce nor a commodity. So that's what's going on, that the labor is being treated as a commercial activity. And they're taxing people arbitrarily against their labor. So that's an unconstitutional tax under New York State Constitution and the United States, because the United States under Article 4 says that the people have a right to be protected under their personal houses, papers, and effects.
Right. Exactly.
So these folks are just taking. They're taking. That's the Fifth Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's labor is supposed to be diminished. Only corporations or companies are supposed to be taxed. And that's in the Constitution.
You know what?
They're taxing people as though we corporations, because they do got to labor as corporations. Yes.
So just like you just said, you was talking about the corporations. So the corporations out here are the ones that's earning income, right?
That's right.
And so the people
using the people's labels for that income.
The people that work for these companies, they earn wages, right? So how?
That's right.
So it's a trick being played somehow with the IRS, man, that make us pay the income of these corporations, man.
What I used to say, Ali, and it's interesting you brought that up. Do a corporation or a company make wages? And the question is no.
Right.
So if they don't make wages, then how could wages be taxable income?
Exactly.
Wages are not an income because corporations don't make wages. They make profits.
Right.
Like
so,
for instance, like,
So are they tricking us by way of that W-4 form?
But not only the W-4 form, that 1040 form right out for a tax return. And if you're going to do a tax return, you have to do an LLC, or you got to do it in the form of an estate or a trust. Gene Keaton kind of go into that, but there's a way you can get all your refunds back, because the 1040, there's a line, I think it's line 7, it may change, it probably changed already. It states wages, salary, and tips. And they want you to take that off the W-2 form as gross income. How in the hell can a wage, salary, and tips can be a gross income? When you say gross, you're talking about groceries. So you're talking about purchasing products, selling it, buying it wholesale, selling it retail for a profit. And that's not happening with a wage, tip, or salary. But they're classifying it as though it's that. And that's the fraud. The 1040 form of the Internal Revenue form That's a fraudulent conveyance of language. Because there's no way that you can say that wages, salary, and tips could be classified as gross income.
Right.
And then they're going to say you got the net. Well, what are they saying between gross and net? What are they saying? What do you comprehend what they're saying? They're saying that you're selling groceries. This is what you gross and your net profit. So the gross is being taxed, and then you get the net profit after you've been taxed on the gross. This is what they're saying on that 1040 relating to the W-2 form. So I can break that whole thing down and show you where the fraud is at.
We'll get back with you. We set up,
know, brother.
Yeah.
And I ain't no tax protester, and I'm not sharing any tax protesting language. As a disclaimer, I am not a tax protester.
Understood.
Because it's very important that I put that disclaimer out. What I'm putting out is knowledge that's coming from sources of information that is being ignored by the Internal Revenue System. And when you begin to start acting on laws that is there, they don't want to hear it. Like Article 1, Section 17. They don't want to hear that you saying that your labor is not an article of commerce nor a commodity. How is he going to tax that and say they're receiving a net profit as though you're doing business? So if they're going to say that, is there recourse to that? Yes. There's recourse.
Right.
You might as well take LLC and put it on the end of your name and operate the way they got you in a business. They got us all operating as a business.
Yep.
So they're charging you a business tax. And I'm gonna tell you something. Let me drop another jewel. So you know, within a state, are they saying there's interstate activity going on? Because how are you subject to a federal income tax? How could that be possible if you are a resident of the state? You're not doing any business outside of the state. If you're doing business within the state, how could you be subject to a federal income tax? Now, how you know these people are playing games? Because Florida don't have a state tax. They hit them with federal, so you get a federal refund. You don't get a state refund. You don't think that it's backwards? How could you get hit with a federal income tax when you are working within the state? You're not working, you're not crossing the borders.
Right.
As earning money. You're not crossing the border. So how do you could be subject to an income tax? How can that be possible? Again, they're using the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
They're saying that you are a United States citizen.
Right.
That's what they're saying. You are a United States citizen. But the question is, can a United States citizen be taxed? Because the government don't tax itself. Matter of fact, in the New Testament, Isa made a statement that was plain to me. He said, does a king tax his son? That's what Isa said, which most people know him as Jesus. He said, does a king tax his son, or does he tax a stranger? So these people are taxing our people as though we strangers, but yet they're calling you a United States citizen.
Right.
So how in the hell can the government tax itself if you who you are? That's why I said that if you being hit with a traffic ticket, listen to what Kemitu saying, because it's all internal revenue. All those courts are all operating on the internal revenue. If you get hit with a traffic ticket, you are the people. And you read it last week, Ali, on the state. And it started off with the people. And under the 11th Amendment, you do not give consent. You have to give consent. So without prejudice, you object to any consent because the fact that the 11th Amendment says that you have to give consent to be sued as the state. And the state is the people.
And just like you talking about the 14th Amendment, I mean, we got everything, they got everything set up in the straw. So the straw is a corporation.
So if they're taxing us within the state with federal income tax, are they saying that we are residents of the District of Columbia? Is that what they're saying? You got to really analyze how these people are operating. And that's why these trusts are so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Very important, man.
You know, but that's the topic for tonight, is revocable and irrevocable trust, and which one is beneficial. They even got us as a trust.
Right.
Inter Vivas Trust. When did the Inter Vivas Trust started with us? See, I throw some questions out because folks be saying some crazy stuff, Ali.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hit them with some questions, they can't even answer it. And guess what? And the answer is simple. Because we keep talking about it all the time, but yet we look at it as though it goes over our heads. The Inter Vivas Trust started with the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The birth certificate is the living trust.
Right.
It's the living estate. The death certificate, that's the deceased estate.
Mm.
And that's probated if you don't have a trust. Now here they got you going to get life insurance policy, not knowing that the death certificate has equity in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that in one of my lectures going back in 2018. I broke that down and showed you the source of the information. Because everybody talk about the birth certificate, but nobody's talking about the death certificate.
Right.
You know me, I be hitting people with some flabbergasted information. They may mess around and give you the gas face behind getting the information. Like, why?
Yeah.
God.
All bonds.
What?
Yeah.
Never heard of that before. Yeah, well, this brother here is putting in the studies because we being slayed out there big time on these different economic platforms.
Well, look here,
like
brother.
It's like the platform they put our ancestors on and auction them off on the platforms.
Right.
Where they're doing the same thing to us. They're auctioning us off on these platforms in a modern way. They're not going by the old chattel way. So everything that's chattel is now chattel paper. And chattel paper is nothing but commercial paper. So the birth certificate, the death certificate, the mortgage, the student loan, the auto loan, the credit card, the utility bill, all those are nothing but commercial paper. And they robbing us blind, or theft of services, I should say. What you was about to say, Brother Ali?
Yeah, Kemitu, let me say this for the people because it's almost time, you know, for us to end this.
Yes.
It's important, my brothers and sisters, man, to get with this brother, set up your trust. I mean, because that's part of us changing, man. Like Noble Ali said, man, we got to change the literature, man, so we can change, man. So this tonight is part of that literature that we have to instill in ourselves, man, to change. Because we can't keep on doing business as usual, man, because we're getting robbed. You know what I mean? These are devils out here, man.
Yes, they are.
Man, so and we become so used to being treated like this. It's like we don't even care. You know what I mean? I know I care. I don't like the way they do business with me. You know what I mean? I don't like how they treat us at all. That's why I stand up the way I do. And everybody should be standing up, and everybody should be learning this new way of doing things. But everybody should set up a trust, man. Go buy a book to show you how to, tell you about trust. Like this one right here is a good one that I've been reading.
Excellent.
But it's important. Get with this brother. Commit to you. You might want to give him your information.
Yes. Moorish Divan. Moorish is MOORISH. D like in David, IV like in Victor, AN like in Nancy at Gmail. That's Moorish Divan. And what you do is you email me your name and your number. You can contact me that way, or you can call me at 347-626-1357. But please text me first before you call me. Put your name and your number and send a text before you call me, because I might miss the call, don't realize it's you. So when you do that, I can put your name and number in my phone and return the call. So that's how you can contact me.
Hey man, you notice, man, every time tonight, brother, every time you've been dropping jewels, man, they've been zapping us, man. Every time you drop some jewels, man, they have you going in slow motion, man, and robotic.
You know how it is.
Yeah. But look, we want to thank everybody, man, for spending the time with us, man. And
you know what before you go, Ali, I want to hear from those brothers who's online with us. I like to hear their feedback, if you don't mind. Like Brother Bey,
I was waiting. I was waiting specifically with that child support topic. Yeah, that was, I didn't know that. And so let me ask you a question. Can you go back? Like in my situation, obviously, my son is 12. So can I go back and do an account of some sort?
If you have his birth certificate and his social security card, you can still open up a custodial account for him if he's not of age, depending on that state. And the states have various terms for ages. But one thing I can say, that if there was a child support case that was opened up by the courts, or there was an account open, normally what we do is an audit on those accounts or a QSA report on those accounts and see what kind of equity that was generated on those accounts, because any payments that was paid was basically surplus monies. You know?
Okay.
So that's something that we need to be aware of. So we work on those accounts.
Any more questions? Nope. Going once, going twice, brother.
Any other questions or feedback, brothers?
Huh?
Islam.
Peace, Brother Salim Bey, talk to me, man.
Can you hear me? Okay. Peace, Morris.
Peace,
brother. I just want to thank you for dropping knowledge once again.
Yes, sir.
You make me realize that I need to deepen my knowledge on trust, because every time I start to think I understand, here comes another brother dropping another jewel that sharpens my knowledge on it. Like, especially when you're speaking about just something as simple as being like, well, look at it, you can tell that it's a revocable trust by the fact that it can be amended. I was like, I never really thought about that.
Right.
You know, so many things we kind of just zoom across as we're reading. And I just thank you for that. It's greatly appreciated.
I have a question, brother.
All right, Noble.
Could you? This is Brother Stan Bey. could you formulate a trust in like the form of an organization? Like, let's say a brother has a temple. Could he formulate some type of trust that would provide some aid or benefit to his membership?
That's very excellent question, because that's what Drew Ali did with the Express Trust. And unfortunately, the Express Trust is not being operated like it should, because the checks and grant checks are supposed to operate as the trustees to the Express Trust that Drew Ali set up. And the Bays and Ills are the beneficiaries of that trust. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I've learned that information 20 years ago. And I noticed that these temples are not operating on that platform. You know, some of them don't even know that Joe Ali set up an Express Trust. You know, and so it was a lot of bickering and fighting, unfortunately. You know, when one deceased, family feud starts to get in. You know, but yes, brother, that could be set up as an Express Trust. And the trustees don't have to be named trustees. You can, whatever the officer you want to name, they can operate as a trustee. So yes, it can be organized, brother.
Islam.
Islam.
Islam, brother. This brother Salim. I was hoping, where could one learn more about that?
More about
creating. Where could one learn more about creating an Express Trust? Or even about the one that Noble Drew Ali created, especially?
There are materials or books that's out there. You would have to do research, brother, just like I do. You know, you have to do research. This, you know, is out there. Like, for instance, the law library, like New York State, for example, as an example, has Express Trust under Article 77 of the Civil Practice Law and Rules, which is known as CPLR. And they do have the forms. So whatever state that you in, if you want to learn how to put that, there is already a format in form of an Express Trust. Every state has that. So you can go to the law library and you can pull up the form and you can see the structure. And then you can insert your language so it can operate the way you want it to operate. That's what Drew Ali did.
So once, I'm sorry. Once you have an EIN with the state, or EIN number under a trust with the state, you said obviously you can't have employees under that. But once you file that EIN number,
that's right.
Is it established? Is trust officially established, or is that just with the state?
Well, that number is for commercial activities.
Okay.
So it doesn't really establish the trust. You know, what established the trust is when the assets is being transferred into the trust. That's what established the trust. The EIN number is just a number to operate in commercial, like for instance, when you want to do some type of business, you know, the EIN number is going to show that this is a trust. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that's about. Like, you're not going to use your social. Definitely not.
Right.
So the EIN number, you know, is already set up as a trust entity, because that's when it becomes taxable. And when you set up an account, you got to make sure that it's a non-bearing interest account, because anything that's bearing interest is going to be taxable.
Yep. Any more questions?
So we good?
Like I say, you know, we got brother Kemitu's number, and Hey man, any questions y'all need, man, call him up. He will answer them. So in the meantime, man, we'll see you the next time. Peace and love, everybody.
Peace and love.
Yes, sir.
Peace and love. All right.
Warfare, red alert, it's warfare. We mentally and physically caught in the crosshair. The fight is for the soul, so many have lost their son. They trying to change your image like women in false hair. The crossbear, the image that the lost share. Unaware Satan's declared war and all's fair. It cost their souls a fortune. The scorching 70 times hotter than the earth's portion. Caution, red alert, caution. They sizing up my people like a slave auction. I told us taking on the soul of every lost one. Run, son, better yet, retreat, son. The beast run the system for a simple reason. Control thoughts that haven't been taught is treason. Think, son, better yet, reflect, son. The rate of maximum state pen erection. The modern day enslaving of dark complexion. With this wicked prison industry out complex, son. Red alert, red alert, red alert. All I got to you, I'm calling. This is an urgent warning, because a storm is coming.